We've all watched the Jake Paul and Ben Askren, as the best who's ever done it. Michael Buffer really botched that name last night. Well, at least most of us was watching the fight, right? A few takeaways for me. I got an opportunity to watch Jake Paul for some time now, up close and personal. So I've seen him work. So I'm going to be a little bit biased in how people are shocked about him beating Ben. Now, let me get this straight. I'm waking up in the morning. I'm seeing everyone saying on social media that the fight was fixed, that it was staged. I just want to remind people that this isn't 1975 where they used to throw fights back in the day, and none of that made sense. It's more of I just think that people don't want to give Jake Paul the credit. Now, I'm not sitting up here and crowning him king of boxing and he's the best fighter ever, but this kid's he's been fighting and boxing and training just for a couple years now. And I think we've all seen his progression. But give him credit. It's time to give him some credit, because even now, still, people will come in and say that Ben isn't a boxer. Let me remind you, Ben Askren is a decorated fighter. Maybe MMA, but he's a decorated fighter. He's been in some real battles, some real wars with some top-notch level, high-class fighters, and has beaten them. So, yeah, I'm not going to give him the upper hand in boxing, which he should have never came in this fight with the upper hand anyway, because Jake has been training and boxing and sparring pro boxers for the last almost 2 years. I'll take it back to say this. Just as everybody else, when you see YouTuber or social media star or internet star or whatever you want to call it, come and do something else, you automatically have a red flag. You don't have the confidence. You don't have the trust that this guy is going to go out and do things he's doing right now in a boxing ring. That changed for me when I got a chance to go and stay with Jake Paul and his team, BJ Flores, great coach, in Shane Mosley's place up in Big Bear, where I trained with them for a few days. It totally changed my opinion of how I saw not only Jake Paul, but anybody that's willing to put in the time and effort in transitioning from what they do to something else. One thing I would like to remind everybody is that you don't play fighting. And I see people all the time that's calling certain people out and calling even pro boxers or pro fighters out on social media. And to me, it's just a bunch of clout chasing, which we have a lot of it nowadays. So that's understandable. But one thing I can tell you is, you don't play fighting. Nate Robinson found that out, and some of these other guys are fighting it out who's just kind of going to test the waters. I'm a big advocate, and I've talked about it for years. I'm talking about it now. I've always think that guys should go and transition and pick up some form of or discipline of combat sports. I think it's good for you. I think it's to have that regimen. I think to have that motive to get up and go and learn something every day. It's great. Great to do, but you can't play fighting. So let's just rewind this back a little bit. And Jake Paul knocking out Nate Robinson, which we all seen that. It became one of the biggest memes of 2020. Was it 2020? I can't get this pandemic got me all messed up. But it became one of the biggest memes on the internet and social media. Nate Robinson quickly found out that if you don't train and you don't have the backing and the proper technique and going into fighting, boxing especially, then you're going to get knocked out. You're going to get embarrassed. So everyone said, hey, Nate Robinson didn't train. He's a basketball player and all this other stuff. And if Jake Paul fought a real fighter, then it's going to be a different story. Well, Ben Askren is a real fighter. He's retired, and he looked just as out of shape as he's always been. Ben Askren has never been he never passed the eye contest, right? He never passed that, but he's always been a damn good fighter. So what now? I think what now is, and you look on social media as I did after the fight, which was a long fight with way too many performances. I think that you're going to, if you're trying to convert any kind of boxing fans, MMA fans, combat sports fans in general, you got to take out some of the performances. They were great. Justin Bieber was great. Doja Cat, and Too Short, Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, obviously legends. Take 2 or 3 of those acts, keep those, and move on where it's entertaining still, but you got to lose the extra. You got to. You're just going to turn too many fight fans away who you're trying to convert some of those fight fans into what you're doing. Triller, I think they're doing a great job, but get rid of some of those performances. That's just my opinion. The second part of it is that going into this fight, there was a lot of people that gave Jake Paul no shot. Why? Because he's a YouTube fighter. He's an internet star. Oh, he only knock out basketball players and other YouTube stars. Well, I thought for sure, 100% coming into this fight, that if he won, it was going to change people's opinion of him and anybody else who puts in the time and effort to transition into combat sports. Well, it didn't. In fact, when I looked on social media after the fight, I saw more hate. I saw that Ben Askren wasn't a fighter, that Jake Paul should fight a real fighter. I saw that it was staged. It was a fluke. It was set up. And quite frankly, I think that the refs did a great job in stopping the fight because it could have got ugly. Sometimes you don't need to see a 100% knockout, a guy laying out cold before you call a fight. If a guy can't walk to you in a straight line and got on his drunk goggles, it's time to call the fight. I also seen that, and I go back to the clout chasing, the trying to get notoriety. Guys calling Jake Paul out all over. Some who haven't done well in their own sport, which made no sense to me. So you're calling guys out because you didn't do well in your sport, and you've been beat up. You lost plenty of fights, but yet you want the clout and fighting somebody who's only been fighting for 2 years. What good does that do? What good does that do Jake Paul? What good does that do anybody who is trying to make money in the sport? And let me remind you guys, these guys are out fighting for money. And I'll tell guys it's in Lights Out Extreme Fighting. My fighters, you're fighting to make money and take care of your family. So if you're a fighter that don't have a big following, you've already been beat up and had many losses in your own sport, stop calling out Jake Paul or anybody who you see can be an easy come up in or easy clout chase into another field. All right. You weren't successful in what you did. Stop trying to get clout and fight someone who you know you can possibly beat. And what good is it to Jake Paul? That, mind you, I believe Jake Paul made $5+ million if I'm not mistaken last night. I don't know what the pay-per-view is going to come back in, but I'm assuming that they are at least 1 million pay-per-views and up. Why would Jake Paul or anybody fight you to go backwards? The object in this fight game is to make as much money as you can while you can, because it don't last forever. And I'll be the first one to tell you that coming from the NFL. It don't last forever. You make your money, you provide for your family, and you move on. So what's next? Whether it's another MMA fighter, whether it's another boxer, which I don't see is going to happen, because unless you're a Floyd Mayweather or a bigger now Manny Pacquiao or just someone with a bigger name, Danny Garcia. I mean, it's just someone with a bigger name in boxing, which is not going to be a much of a match because you're more skilled than Jake Paul or another guy who is starting a fight. So what's next? I look and I saw that Jake Paul wants Nate Diaz. I think that'd be a great fight. I think that obviously, Nate Diaz is a much better boxer, a much better athlete than Ben Askren. I think that's the next fight to go. But what if? Let's say this, and Nate Diaz is one of the badasses of our time, right? Even though MMA, I'm just talking about in combat sports in general. Just a badass across the board. What if? What is it going to take for Jake Paul or any one of these guys to go and who's transitioning over before they get some credit, and it not to be staged or not to be set up? What is it going to take? My guess is this. Jake Paul and a lot of these guys who are transitioned over, and Frank Mir, who also fought in that card, who fought a professional boxer, didn't look as bad as I thought he would. But anybody who knows the fight game and understand how things go, Frank Mir could have been knocked out at any given time. It looked like he was he was letting up on him. This guy was a world champion boxer and could have knocked him out at any given time, in my opinion. But I can tell you this. I can tell you who started all of it. And whether you want to hate, love, or do whatever you want to do, I can tell you who started it. It's Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor. They set the tone. They opened the floodgates for these things to happen. And this is why combat sports, boxing, MMA, whatever it is, will continue to get bigger. The sports are going to continue to grow. You're going to have a lot of retired athletes, a lot of celebrities, entertainers who will now look to start fighting other entertainers, other athletes. And this is something I've been talking about for the last few years. This is where combat sports is going. And I'd say this, and anybody who have a problem with this, and I come across a lot of fighters that initially, I don't know so much now, that initially had a problem with these things taking place. When you have a Jake Paul or someone just coming into the industry and they're making $500,000, I think Ben Askren last night took home between $800,000 and $1 million. Ben Askren didn't make $1 million in 3 fights fighting MMA, right? So what you're going to have here is a different landscape of combat sports that's going to start happening here soon. And any fighter or any fan or anybody that has a problem with this don't understand what you have a problem with. This is going to grow the sport. More doors are going to be open. More things are going to happen. More opportunities are going to happen for the fighters. And if I'm a fighter, I want these things to happen. I want to have an opportunity to fight and knock out a social media star, a YouTuber, a basketball player, a football player, a rugby star, track star, whatever it is. I want that opportunity because that opportunity means more money for me. So any fighter or anybody that's coming into the fight game or in the fight game that has a problem with this or think it's a freak show, maybe it is. Maybe it's a fad, maybe it's a freak show, but people are buying it, the pay-per-view show. It is a real thing, and people are tuned in. And you can tell by things trending on social media last night. And now major outlets, major TV, major streaming are all covering it because it is a thing. So what is it going to take for Jake Paul to get some respect? Does he have to fight a guy like Nate Diaz? Does he have to fight another boxer? In my opinion, if I'm Jake Paul, I keep picking my opponents the way I want to pick them. And I'll keep calling out everybody who I want to call out. And if I'm a fighter on the MMA side, boxer, whoever it may be, and have an opportunity to take a fight like this and make this type of money, you take it.